Welcome to Spiritcast number 4, the fall season update. I am currently up to date with all the seasonal anime that I'm currently watching, so let's discuss it one by one. First will be the Aquatope on White Sand. I do have video essays for all of these. There will be spoilers, so brace yourself, because this is going to be a long one, and I'm planning to do it in just one take. The Aquatope on White Sand. The penguins are better characters and more entertaining to watch. The series moves very slow, and the plot goes out the window sometimes. This anime is like a snack of a series, just average and nothing amazing. It's something to watch for its happy feel-good atmosphere, but after the fact, it has no real impact on the viewer as a great series. It's annoying that it plasters the magical fantasy type aspect about it, but hasn't done anything about it and even abandoned it at this point. What's worse is that is the only thing I found interesting about it, 19 episodes in, and that mysterious kid is still irrelevant and unexplained. What's the point? This has turned into Kukuru, slowly getting pushed aside in the series with her job, as she is frustrated, and as Fuka takes the spotlight and becomes the more amusing character, as she becomes a symbol of motivation. There have been many theories that some of the characters may be bisexual or gay, into each other, etc., etc. And the staff sure loves joking about it because it gets people's attention that want it to go that way, and only watch it because they want to be right. It feels like bait to pull in more viewers. I've seen some spoilers for what's ahead, and it looks promising and intense, but at this point the series is doomed to be average, as it is far too late, 19 episodes in, for it to pick itself back up from the viewers' disappointments. Next, Osama rankings. This is a series destined for greatness. It puts a smile on my face and feels like the next great series after Odd Taxi and Sunny Boy. As usual, many people look down upon it because of its art, which is embarrassingly ignorant. Look at the latest episode, episode 5. It is definitely one of the most brutal and dark episodes in a while. From Daida, seeing his father grinded up into paste, having to also face a large magical bird get decapitated, burned into ash, and then its blood given to him as a drink. Not only that, Domas gets hit in the wrist with a sword and you can see the blood gush out. That is followed by him finishing the job himself and cutting his own hand off. And yet people say this is a nonsensical kid show. Speaking of the art, it's beautiful. When Bebin and Apias fought, it took my breath away just how magnificently it was animated. In one shot, the animation shows Bebin running towards him, passing a tree in between and slashing down. Not only that, the execution was brilliant. There wasn't any dialogue during this, but the tension and intensity is there. This series is about Boji. Episode 5 was the big reveal, and many huge reveals were made here. One of them is that Boji is apparently the way he is because his powers got sealed away somehow. He has been reduced to a small and weak boy who can't talk, is deaf, and not so bright. But he struggles. He tries his hardest, he cries and loses, but he gets back up. His determination is something the viewers have come to respect, and now the viewers are rooting for him and want the best for him. There's a charm to him, and considering how emotional and painful his story is, I find myself constantly overwhelmed with emotions, especially during the precious moments. He is now on an adventure and on the run from assassination attempts, and it was a neat twist that Kage was always there protecting him and keeping his promise that Boji had sorrowfully thought had broken. Kage I've already talked about in the previous Osama Rankings video, but I thought it was a great idea that he was always in the backpack helping Boji. I've enjoyed the special bond these two have. Domas is in a state of mental stress. He does love Boji, but he holds his orders above his feelings, or what he feels is really right. This is why he pushed Boji into the pit and tried to kill him, but the viewers can clearly see that he didn't want to do it. Amusingly enough, Daida asked him why he voted for him to be king. Domas explains that he thought Boji was not good enough and that Daida has what it takes. Daida laughs and feels he can't trust Domas because he betrayed Boji by doing this. If Domas, who was in charge of making Boji strong, abandons him like this and chooses Daida, then Daida can't help but suspect that Domas will do the same thing to him. Daida himself is showing new sides to him the viewers weren't expecting. As king, he has somehow developed this code of honor. He ranked low in the ranking of kings and wants to be the strongest. The mirror, which looks like the puppet master behind a lot of what's been happening behind the scenes, gives him that drink so that he may inherit the king's powers. But Daidas doesn't do it. As weak as he is in his current state, he wants to train hard and reach the top on his own without cheating. It's a surprisingly respectable side of him. At the same time, he ordered the death of his own brother while still having somewhat of a soft spot for him. If he isn't careful, the mirror will manipulate him for its own needs and agenda. Queen Healing is another character that has this love-hate type of relationship with Boji. She starts off by becoming the new mother and eventually earns the trust of Boji after healing him. She cares for him and for his safety, but doesn't feel he should be king and ultimately sabotages Boji's chance to take power. After surviving his own assassination attempt, Apias, the man with the staff, is still making his way back to the castle and will probably confront Daida. Bebin was shown being pulled on the ground by something. Maybe these two will fight again? Among other things, the music has been great, and I have been enjoying the world building. In closing, every episode has been amazing, and this series could be the anime of the season depending on how a few other series that I'm going to talk about end. Next is Komi Can't Communicate. Anime with comedy like this tends to burn itself out. The joke eventually gets tiring and stops being funny. It happened when Nagatoro and the Duke of Destiny is made, but the directing of this series helps it stay fresh. At first glance, it's just a girl who is too scared to talk to others, who is being helped by her friends as she tries to overcome this and make more friends. After the first few episodes, I did start getting tired and fed up with the big eyes glance that she always makes, but I have to appreciate the effort the staff put into elevating the jokes and making it more entertaining. It reminds me of Kare Kano and Bakemonogatari, where even though the characters are just talking, there's attention to details around them, fast shots between them showing their reactions and emotions in real time, hilarious edits of the characters during the conversations, and the constant use of signs to hilariously help portray what has happened or what they are feeling. I thought surely by episode 6 I get tired of this series and its repetitive jokes, but it has been able to remain fresh 6 episodes in. As a result, I found myself laughing much more than I thought I would. Some characters have really grown on me, such as Najimi. This character is getting better and funnier in my opinion as the episodes go on. The genre of this character is amusing because even the series itself jokes around that it's unknown. The dynamic between Tadano and Komi is nice. You can tell there's a romantic feeling building up between the two. He helps her out while trying to overcome his own feelings of shyness over her. This isn't classified as a romance, but it's obvious these two will become the love interests of the series at some point. I am a bit worried because the manga is very long and apparently still doing the same thing and progressing very little in the plot. All the other characters are for the most part forgettable and mentally deranged with their obsessions with Komi. Komi not being able to communicate has allowed some pretty funny jokes, such as how hairdressers, ramen chefs, and coffee shop employees take her orders by her silence and try to feel or try to understand what she wants by that. Her rival had at some point finally given up and admitted Komi is better, but Komi's silence after she tries to shake Komi's hand gets misinterpreted and the rival decides she will remain one. As of episode 6, however, I think Najimi has become my favorite and most interesting character. The cast of voice actors are also putting on a noticeably good performance as well. It's funny and the jokes work, but I still feel it will burn itself out unless the staff continue to provide this good and creative direction in its execution of the comedy. Next is Lupin the Third, Part 6. By the way, we're listening to Panzer Dragoon RPG, if you're wondering what the music is. I actually picked a pretty long playlist for this with different albums. Now, where are you? Lupin the Third, Part 6 is a series that intimidates a lot of people. Even those users on my anime list that obsess in posting in every new episode in the forum of every new seasonal anime series are shamefully ignoring it. The fear is that there is a large amount of content that the viewers feel they have to watch to understand this. Fortunately, that is not the case. It's an episodic series, such as Dirty Pair, and it is very easy to follow along with the plot and characters. Episode 0 of this, for the most part, tells you all you have to know to go on. This is a series that doesn't take itself seriously. Lupin and his group often use Looney Tune tier tactics to get out of danger. It's laughable how unrealistic a lot of what happens in here is, but it is done on purpose. This time around, Lupin meets with the great Sherlock Holmes and has now become his target. They managed to have one confrontation so far, but it looked like Holmes is more clever than Lupin thinks. But Lupin, of course, always manages to get away. Even if caught, like they did in the beginning, Lupin and his gang always find a way to break out. I'm personally excited to see how this rivalry between Lupin and Sherlock Holmes plays out. So the point of this series is to enjoy this wild ride as Lupin and his group continue to be great thieves and live the luxurious lifestyle as a result, while avoiding all the dangers and people that want to capture them. One of its strong points is the well-written, funny, and clever dialogue that puts it above the rest of the fall season anime. The plot in each episode is interesting enough, and they even hired guest writers. Because of this, a lot of people took an interest in episode 4, the latest episode, because it was written by Mamoru Oshii. I was excited as well, as he is a great director who has directed many of my favorite movies and series, and he didn't disappoint. And just as always, many people complain because Oshii's style and amazing writing just goes over their heads, and the I don't get it so it's bad crowd moans again in frustration. But this is a fun series. It's episodic, but the staff really go out of their way to make it an entertaining experience. Shame on all the anime YouTuber clones for passing this up. Next is Build Divide Code Black. This is a card game anime that is surprisingly amusing. Part of what makes it good is how hilariously bad certain parts of it are. The main character, Teruto, is another Dark Yuki type clone, but he is ridiculous. He is so ridiculous I can't help but burst out laughing at how over the edge and pathetic his lines are. Having lost his memory and gotten involved somehow in something big in the past that he can't remember, he is now slowly recovering and is hellbent on defeating the king and becoming the #1 player of Build Divide. Once he puts on the bunny hood and the Joker smile, you know you're about to laugh at some secondhand embarrassment from his villain-like lines that are too corny to be taken seriously. 5 episodes in, and he has already lost, which is amusing because Teruto is the main character. I mean, you can kind of understand because it's the king he lost to. The king ends up being his little sister, who has an unhealthy obsession with him. If I could add to the weirdness of Teruto's character, he has a hilarious fixation with bread, to the point he can be easily manipulated with it. Not only that, he is homeless and lives in a tent by a bridge where he fishes to survive and drinks bitter coffee. Despite his situation, no one seems to question it, and he seems to live pretty comfortably for a homeless boy. He has made 2 friends along the way. One is Sakura, who has been hinted at many times now that she might not be real or is some kind of hologram. To add to that, all this world is a city surrounded by nothing. She seems to have her own agenda that Teruto is not aware about. Then there is Hiyori, who begged Teruto to train her, and thus he became her master. She is now his personal cheerleader and a goofy type of character. There are other characters, but I don't really have much to say or care to. The battles are decent. Teruto's deck revolves around gambling and luck, which is convenient for the plot. I haven't done any research into the actual game, so I'll be learning as I watch. So far, the story is interesting enough, but I have wondered if Teruto is good or bad since the series almost portrays him as a villain. It's still, as they unfold more about his little sister... Oops, sorry about that. Anyway, the whole thing now about this series is, what's the deal with her little sister? That strange girl with the eye cloth on her face, and then of course the guy with the hat. That's also up there. It's a decent series. Next is Deep Insanity, The Lost Child. There's a horrible picture to it. I just put the characters instead. Or you can see both this way. Deep Insanity, The Lost Child is one of the series this season that is plagued by a boring and bland main character. Shigure wants to be a hero and is not very interesting a character besides that. His naivety gets crushed as he sees the reality of the underground, where several of his comrades are not only emotionally and physically scarred from fighting, but also come from tragic backgrounds. The last episode, that being number 5, was weird because it was nothing like the rest, where Shigure and Kobato talk and bond over their love for anime and manga. Their comrades set them up to become closer, and it worked out. It just felt like a very strange episode compared to what's been happening as of far. The comrades include Larry, a brain-damaged individual who doesn't feel pain or fear. As a result, his character is creepily optimistic, and he has very little regard for himself or his life until Leslie gives him a wake-up call that he might not feel the pain of death, but that doesn't mean that won't cause emotional pain for others. Leslie, a character who identifies as a woman who used to perform in some type of drag show before getting dragged into this. So far, Leslie is my favorite character, since the rest don't seem very likable at the moment, since they aren't too well developed as they should be by now. Leslie is their superior and the most useful soldier in the team, but is often sarcastic and jokes around a lot. It's revealed in the latest episode that mysterious man with the shades in suit used to be his lover, and the two are now in a situation where one is going to have to kill the other. Leslie's amusing, but death may be near for this character. The only other character worth mentioning is Mochinoki. She's a failed idol similar to Fuka from the Akato series, except Mochinoki left the idol world because of some scandal involving lewd pictures. She starts off being very serious about her job, but opens up to Shigure eventually and reveals her lighthearted self. Apart from this, the music seems fine, but I don't really care for the opening and ending. One really bad aspect of this series that thankfully hasn't been used lately is the CGI. The first episode is notorious for how badly animated that CGI monster was. Now Shigure is faced with a mission that, according to Vera, who is a hollow character devoid of any relevance to me, will make Shigure the hero he desperately wants to be. It was a twist in that episode where a little girl he spends the entire episode saving ends up being their next target, unbeknownst to him until he is told. Vera wants him to assassinate her. It's unknown why or what exactly that little girl is, but even Leslie is willing to step up and do the dirty deed if need be. So you can guarantee that Shigure will have a problem with this and will end up rebelling against his superiors. This series overall is decent, but not among my favorite. Alright, next it's Muv-Luv Alternative. Muv-Luv Alternative is a series I felt I had to force myself to watch for a while. I found it funny how horrified the Muv-Luv community is with this. Episode after episode, many of the fans had meltdowns about how terrible this adaptation is. Even me, who knows nothing about this series, had many laughs at how badly this series is animated. The first episode was a filler that served no real purpose than to let newcomers know what to expect, I suppose. Takeru travels back in time due to the failure of the alternative plan. He is forced to meet all his friends and comrades all over again, as they now have no idea who he is. Though it's implied a version of him might exist there, and was killed possibly. As he goes on, the girls wonder how he knows so much and why he is so good at piloting the mechas. He would go on collaborating with Yuko by convincing her that he is from the future and having her go through a plan to prevent the disaster. That's really all that happens. It didn't get that interesting until the last 2 episodes. Takeru is then sent back to his time and continues his struggle. After a terrible start, maybe this has a chance to be good now that the series slowly starts picking itself back, up to its feet. I don't care for any of the characters really, but I could be just biased since I haven't read or watched anything before this. But the outrage from the community still stands. The CGI looked decent in one of the most recent episodes, but there is hardly any action. Yeah, I don't really feel much for this one. Next, it's Platinum Man. Platinum Man is a series made by the author of Death Note, but it's cursed with a terrible reputation that its manga has. I haven't read it and don't know why the manga is disliked so much, but compared to Death Note, this is trash. Did the writers lose all their talent after Death Note? Mirai is one of those morally obsessed cowards who doesn't want to kill, though his opponent will absolutely kill him. He doesn't want to hate. This isn't Barney and Friends or Sesame Street. He is an insult to the brilliance of Light Yagami and L. These writers were able to create an incredible dynamic in Death Note with brilliant direction from good directing with the adaptation. Here it's Mirai versus Metro Polyman, and Mirai is so pathetic I am now rooting for Metro Polyman, who looks just like Reinhardt from the Legend of the Galactic Heroes, to win. So far, Metro Polyman has been outsmarting all his opponents, or god candidates, and steadily killing them off one by one. One thing I find funny is the morality of the angels. Nasi has a seemingly homicidal point of view, but it's alright as long as it makes Mirai happy, I suppose. But Mirai has done nothing. He has no plan at all. Nanato, who is dying of cancer, has more courage and has done more than Mirai in facing Metro Polyman. However, Nanato got blown up with a psychotic serial killer in one of Metro Polyman's schemes the last episode. Considering he wore this advanced military suit, he might survive. I don't really feel the need to explain the God Candidate plan or the powers of the arrows, which should be mostly understood by now by the viewers. The only thing they add is when the God Candidates experiment with the mechanics of how they work and find new ways to use them. Other than that, there are no other characters worth mentioning or talking about besides Metro Polyman himself. They did decide to give him some humanity after depicting him as a ruthless killer by showing that he wants to save his sister, who is entrapped in ice. He is just another student in high school and also took his friend's weird advice to get rid of all the ugly people in the world. That was kind of random and unnecessary. They really dropped the ball here, but the opening sounds nice. Next it's Can I Make Your Ears Happy in 180 Seconds? There's not much to add to this series. They are short 3-minute episodes about different girls trying out ASMR for the pleasure of the listeners. They at least try to make some kind of story sometimes. But this is the worst of everything I'm watching. I'm not into ASMR, and I just feel awkward during the entire time I watch these episodes. Next is Sakugan. Sakugan had a really strong start. It nails the dynamic between Memempu and Gagamba well as this funny father-daughter adventure. In this funny father-daughter adventure, as they drove into the underground world and look for the mysterious destination that's on Memempu's map. I've enjoyed the western feel with the music and the rundown cities. It's interesting portrayal of the world of Sakugan. But as the series goes on, it is starting to feel more episodic. I don't dislike episodic anime, but it tends to be majorly hit or miss depending on the execution, since the plot isn't really going anywhere. Take Dirty Pair, a series that is episodic, and though I enjoy it, most of the episodes feel like average filler. It's the dynamic between Kei and Yuri that is what makes the show, and in Sakugan, it's Memempu and Gagamba's dynamic that make it. Maybe it will become more plot heavy, but even now the mecha action is happening less and less, not to mention the kaiju designs are not very good. This feels sort of like a letdown because the quality is decreasing, but Sakugan is still a great series. Miroro is another character I like. He is an authoritative figure that has a cryptic-like sense of humor. He likes to be smug and often makes Gagamba mad. Gagamba himself continues to prove how childish he is, and sometimes it feels like Memempu is the one that is the parent figure. They went to this place that looks like Italy, and he tries to pick up on women and gets rejected 12 times. It was hilarious to watch, and eventually he gets caught up with a woman who wants a debt that apparently he owes her. Yuri was introduced last episode. He is a rebellious gang member that steals in order to survive. Memempu and Gagamba become delinquents and join in, but eventually have to go out and stop Yuri, who wants to hack into the city and become a sort of cyber terrorist. They stop him, but he ends up joining the team. Besides this, I really enjoy the fun opening and ending. I hope that Sakugan can pull it together and bring back the glory of the earlier episodes. Next is Shikizakura. Shikizakura is yet another mecha series that I can't really take seriously. It alternates between CGI and 2D art. They even had an episode that had no CGI in it. As a comedy, it can nail the humor, and the series does a good job giving character development to many characters that needed it, such as Kaede, Haruko, and Kipe, but even then, it's not enough. Unfortunately, Kakeru is yet another bland and boring protagonist. Naive to the extreme and thinks like a child, he is yet another I want to be the moral hero type character. What gives this series a funny edge is Ibara. He is an Oni, if I recall, that fuses with Kakeru. This character is very over the edge and says a lot of violent and rude things to the cast. I find him funny, but somewhat unfitting with the rest and how over the top he is. Then there's Uka and Ryo, but they haven't been focused on with any real development, so they don't really matter to me at the moment. Some new characters were also introduced, such as Uka's sister Benio. However, very few characters seem likable, with the exception of Ibara. As for the villains, they are terribly designed, look generic, and look like mindless nonsense. I would like to see better writing on the villains because it doesn't work as it is now. The series is slightly above average, but still enjoyable for its comedy. Next is Heike Monogatari. Well, as I've said before, this series feels like you're watching a dream that is slowly turning into a nightmare as the plot gets darker and more hopeless. It's based on an old Japanese story and features my favorite opening and ending of the season. The story follows Biwa as she meets and journeys with the Heike. They have lost nearly all support by now, and many of the characters have been killed off. Even Yoshinaka, a character with a nice introduction and amusing personality, didn't last that long and was killed off soon after. Now, this series has a bad habit of introducing very good, likable characters and then just killing them off way too fast. But I mean, that's the story. It can't be helped. It's a shame that this series has great characters and just kills them off too soon. As the suffering continues, Biwa has found herself powerless to be able to do anything about it. As the years go by, she doesn't age also. Yeah, so there's something about Biwa. She's not human. The recent focus has been the continuing decline of the Heike, and the deaths of those at the top. It's sad to see because many characters from the beginning that the viewers came to know are falling left and right so quickly. One of them drowned himself, another one let himself be defeated in battle, and thousands of soldiers were ambushed and let off a cliff. I would say this is definitely among my favorites of the season and will compete against Osama ranking. Of course, this series will lose because hardly anyone is watching it, and that's a shame considering how good this is. This is 86. Alright. I don't like 86. I've made that clear on this channel that it is overhyped. There really isn't anything new I have to say about this, and those that have seen my 86 content know why I don't, as I have gone into great detail about why I don't like this series. I'm just gonna put down the main points this time. Season 1 and 2 are planned to build up during the first half and go all out in the second half, but the build up is just too boring and drags on. Milize is barely even in Season 2, which has outraged fans, since what makes 86 is the dynamic between Milize and the 86. In fact, she's so absent from the show, they had to bring her back as a hallucination for Shin. Shin received so much character development in Season 1 to help with his boring and emotionless personality, and has shown none of it for 5 episodes in Season 2. You could say that that's just the way he is because he's the Undertaker, but it just doesn't work, it's boring. Sawano makes music that sounds all the same, though it can sound good. Milize, despite being in a very political environment, is so politically ignorant, and her understanding of politics is on such an elementary level, it makes her annoying. They hadn't even shown proper growth to her consciousness in Season 2 as of yet. Besides, she was smug once, and that was it. None of the 86 besides Shin really matter. I wouldn't care if all of them besides him died, since they never tried to properly develop any of the other 86 besides Shin and give them meaning. They are just 86 that the viewers have gotten accustomed to seeing, or have gotten used to, but they are irrelevant, really. Frederica and her voice actor that screeches so much, it basically ruined her as a character. She got way too much screen time that they should have given to Shin and Milize. This is a series that is praised and praised by all those popular anime YouTubers and smaller ones that are clones of each other, which I find annoying to no end because none of them mention my critiques, and it isn't the masterpiece they think it is. For being high production, many episodes don't take advantage of it, and Season 2 has barely had any action. The CGI battles are not impressive because of the boring and bland design of the mechas from both the Legion and the Republic. The designs are so unoriginal, lazy, and generic, I get confused which mecha is from which side. These are most of the points I have as to why I am not enjoying 86. Next, it's Mushoku Tensei. Oh boy. I don't like Mushoku Tensei. I've made that clear on this channel that it is overhyped. There really isn't anything new I have to say about this. And those that watch my Mushoku Tensei content know why I don't, as I have gone into great detail about why I don't like this series. I am just going to put down the main points this time. It validates pedophiles in the West by exploiting its Japanese laws of how far it can push the sexualization of children. It encourages this behavior by creating a fan base that can relate to Rudos and feel it's fine because he does it. Thus, one of the most disgusting fan bases has been created. The staff felt the unnecessary need to add anime-only degenerate content of Rudos, doing even more degenerate things to children and women. Anime YouTubers, even most of the smaller ones, are all ignoring the elephant in the room about this problem, and they are scared to bring it up. Instead, they just talk about everything else and ignore this problem with the series. This is a series so dependent on fan service, it is shameful, and without the fan service, this series has nothing else going for it, and hardly anybody would watch it. Isekai is a genre that has a bad name for itself, so now that a slightly above average one has appeared, it is getting plastered everywhere and praised way too much. The story itself is mediocre. It's the adventures of Rudos and friends, but has instead of creating a mystical journey of wander through the land, and it's turned to this sad mopey story of drama between Rudos and Paul, and the degeneracy of Rudos that becomes too much of the focus of the series. Right off the bat, Paul is a worthless alcoholic. He gets mad at Rudos over a misunderstanding with him, and Rudos fails to properly explain himself like the fool that he is. They spend an entire episode making up, which just took up too much time. Sylph, one of the most enjoyable characters, has been gone for a long time now. Roxy, another character that makes this series, has barely even been there also. It's Milizay from 86 all over again. The production of this is very high quality, but like I have said many times before, good animation doesn't write a good story. Next, it's Tactop Destiny. I don't like Tactop Destiny. I made that clear on this channel that it is overhyped. There really isn't anything new I have to say about this, and those that have seen my Tactop Destiny content know why I don't, as I've gone into great detail about why I don't like this series. I am just going to put down the main points this time. Tact and Destiny are both boring, drone-like characters. Tact has shown no growth, besides being just always angry and stuck up. And he only matters when he plays the piano, really. Also, he stinks. Destiny is another hollow Violet Evergarden ripoff that makes annoyingly bad decisions. I don't understand her appeal. The D2 are just a bunch of nonsense. They are horribly written villains with ugly and bland designs. They are so easy to beat that it feels as if there are no stakes or risks to be taken in this series by the cast. Titan and Lenny are much more likable characters than Tact and Destiny, and should have been the main characters. They left, which is a shame because they felt like they could have made the show much better. Anna is one of the most useless and irrelevant characters in the series, that I've ever seen in anime. Recently, she was reduced to a fan service character. Cassette was the only real likable character outside of Lenny and Titan, but was killed off in one episode. This is yet another series that receives praise from all over the internet because of its animation, but it really has nothing else going on besides that, and that doesn't write a good story, as I keep saying. The plot is basically a trip to New York. That's it. All the side quests along the way just feel irrelevant. After all the build-up from the viewers, since Mappa and Madhouse are involved, it's amusing now to see all of the disappointment. The best part is this was made to promote a gacha game, so you already know from the beginning not to expect anything at all. Next, it's Rumble Garandol. Rumble Garandol. This is a series that, like Sakugan, had really strong early episodes and then kind of dropped in quality. They ditched Rin to focus on the new battery girl, Yuki the idol. It's a mini arc where she finds the inspiration to become an idol singer again after failing, while Hosamichi helps her as his manager. One thing this series does right is being funny. I have no complaints about the humor. Another good thing about this series is that it has a lot of likable and memorable characters. And based on the roster, there is still one major character left to introduce. The kid on the bottom right with the purple. Hosemichi continues to work for the military to pay off his debt to Anju. And Anju, of course, is always there to remind him that he can always just sell his organs instead. The strange thing in this series are the villains. They don't really seem like much of a threat. They seem kind of like a joke so far. they hadn't really explored them either. They just kind of show up and then get pushed back and they flee and just rinse repeat. Musashi is also merciful and spares Yuki after she gets caught with illegal idol magazines as part of her job. I like how they consider idols terrorists, where they call their shows guerrilla gigs. I find that hilarious. How ridiculous that sounds. After 2 episodes, I hope to see some great ones coming up next, because I really do have high expectations for this series. Next, it's Kyokai Senki. This series has been one of the weaker ones, tragically. The only thing I have really enjoyed was when Gashin and Amo fought Ghost. It was a very intense fight that unfortunately seems rare in this series now. A shame because it uses 2D animation instead of ugly CGI, which I was happy for at first. But to add to the tragedy, the recent episodes have been really lazy on the animation. It's 2D, but still frames during fights and flashy lights were used cheaply and shamelessly, and they called it animation. What a waste of potentially good use of 2D. Amo's been fighting against the oppressor and getting ahead with his Imaim. There's not really much more to add to this. She did go back to the village to see her comrade that got crushed by Ghost, but it's just another Amu saves the day type plot. At least with the recent episode, it had a really amusing end, where a new and powerful mind got introduced. It was bizarre to see when it meets with Amu that its AI is sort of out of it, and the driver is a girl who came out of it crying. That was bizarre. Yeah, the ending of the latest episode was it was really, really strange. Positive-wise, I could say I like the opening, but it's average at the moment. Next is Scarlet Nexus. Scarlet Nexus. This is definitely among the worst series of the year. Its story makes little sense and combines countless amounts of sci-fi plots. That is just a sloppy plot with no consistency. Put together bad music, mostly terrible characters, lazy animation, horrifyingly bad CGI, and terribly written and designed villains, and you get this mess. What is it with the designs on the others? They are among some of the most terribly designed monsters I have ever seen. There have now been so many ridiculous plot twists and reveals, I don't even know where to start or if I even want to. All I can say is that Yoito and Kasane are terrible main characters. Arashi continues to be the only likable character, so at least I can look forward to seeing her. What a shame for Arashi. A great character stuck in a terrible series. Nagi finally died and I could care less. Karen goes back to the past and is never seen again. And Kageru is some sort of 2,000-year-old quadruple agent that lied about killing Yuito's father. Yuito finally does something bold and nearly kills him though, but hesitates because he feels there is more to Kageru's story, and he is right. Kageru had actually spared Yuito's dad's life, or was prepared to, and it was an Udder that actually delivered the killing blow. There's also a giant vortex floating in the air that's about to bring the end of the world. Killing Yoito seems to be the only way to resolve it, or get rid of it, but they are looking for another way. Now the sci-fi plot intensifies, and Kasane goes to the future to get her and Yoito's mom, because they almost reveal they are related, and the mom somehow expected this to happen because of how brains and the red strings are somehow connected to alternate timelines, and she returns with Kasane to the present to meet with Yoito. This is just a salad of plots mixed together. As you can tell, there's no consistency here. I'm actually kind of worried with the next couple of episodes because they might just introduce even more plot lines and plot twists. And why is Hanabi so useless? All she does is cry and panic when Yuito is in trouble. There are also many times that I forget that Tsugumi even exists in this series. Yeah, some of these characters, despite that they're always there, they don't get focused on. They kind of they shaft them aside. They don't develop them. That's a huge mistake. Naomi ends up dying, and so do Alice in their other forms. But it had no emotional impact on me because Kanade would always act very erratic and annoying, like whenever she was with her sister. One of the things that's funny about this series and how bad it is that it has a really bad habit of milking scenes of the cast sitting on the couch talking. They do that way too much. way. It's noticeable how much they focus on this series, wasting so much time. Characters sitting on the couch talking. If you watch this series, you'll know what I mean. Because, like I said, it's noticeable. There is just so much wrong with this series, but I am now starting to actually enjoy it. I think this series broke me because I'm actually starting to enjoy it now. It's a mess that I've gotten used to, like a bad relationship that I can't get out of. I actually look forward to seeing just how much more ridiculous this story is going to get. Next is Tesla Note. Alright. Tesla Note is a tragedy because CGI aside, I have been really enjoying this series. It's really funny, but the viewers are too thick-headed to be able to look at anything else besides the CGI. People are literally looking at CGI scenes that people are sharing. They'll go to My Anime List, not even watch the show, and give it a 1. Come on now, you gotta have more sense than that. Kuruma and Botan have one of the best dynamics I have seen, being on par with being as entertaining as Memempu and Gagamba and Sakugan. There's an obvious romance building here as well. Mickey and Oliver feel like a nod to Reinhardt and Kid Ice from Legend of the Galactic Heroes. But I must say that Mickey is a very funny and amusing character. He has a bizarre personality and says a lot of strange things that not even Oliver can mostly understand. But it's just so funny, he's just so funny and entertaining that Mickey has become my favorite character at the moment. The CGI is so bad, I find myself bursting with laughter in every episode as a result. To make it worse, they add 2D scenes in between that disturb me or just make me laugh more at how it just does not work at all to mix 2D with CGI. Here's a comment I made about the most recent episode. This is the best episode so far. It's so hilariously bad, animation-wise, I could not stop laughing. The CGI 2D mix does not work at all, and when they switch the same character with that, they don't even look close to being on model. The whistling part, with the new characters being introduced, is one of the most awkward character introductions I have ever seen. And then there's a part where Yonosuke makes a still 2D reaction face, and obviously moves around and changes expression after in CGI, but it immediately goes back to that exact same 2D face reaction. But the writing and jokes do work. The jokes the characters make on each other are actually really funny. That part at the end where they couldn't animate Mickey and Oliver taking down all those staff members, and instead they showed them all falling around randomly in unrealistic numbers was comedy gold. And so Mickey and Oliver are supposed to be taking down these staff from the ship to help Botan, but instead of animating them fighting the staff and knocking them down, you just see bodies falling on the floor, and Mickey and Oliver are nowhere to be found. And by the time they finally show Mickey and Oliver fighting, they're already fighting the last few staff members. But you realize that what just happened is it's just hilariously terrible in how it was executed. In closing, don't let the CGI get to you. This is among my favorites for the season. And yes, the animation is bad, but it's so bad it's good and amusing. And then there's the funny song that keeps getting used over and over. It ruins whatever scene it's used in, but it makes me laugh how awkward of a song it is. Yeah, those of you who watch the show, that know there's this song that keeps playing throughout the series. It takes away your ability to be able to take what's going on in those scenes seriously. It's a terrible song. It's like something you hear like at a circus. Let's test a note. Next is Megaton Musashi. This is another one of my favorites. Sadly, hardly anyone at all is watching it because it didn't get subtitles or get licensed. There are only fan subtitles. As the story continues, the last remaining of this human civilization has to go on the move since the location has been given away because of them getting infiltrated by the aliens disguising themselves as humans. So the people are wondering who could be enemy, who could be foe. Kind of reminds me of that horror movie, The Thing. But some of them know a place that also has humans, and though many believe it to be rumors, the people were convinced by those that believe in it, and they now have no choice but to look for this other supposed human civilization, or face getting obliterated by the aliens. Yamaro continues to use Megaton Musashi in creative ways to defeat the aliens. It's funny how sometimes he puts his whole crew in danger in nearly overheating and causing the mecha to blow up, but he just doesn't care if he feels he can win. Back at the base, Sayaka has grown sort of accustomed to Yamato's dangerous handling of Megaton, but she slowly is starting to have faith in him, though she still worries. The princess of the aliens, who sometimes possesses Asuna, has now started to see Yamato in a much more respectable way after observing him, which makes her feel sympathetic towards him and the humans. This is obviously going to cause a lot of problems since her mother, the queen, wants to kill all of humanity. June is introduced. She is the leader of a gang and ends up confronting Yamato and Ryugo. She suspects that there is something strange happening in the town and suspects them of being part of this conspiracy. It was hilarious when she questioned them as to why they keep disappearing from school, and they had to lie and say they were hiding in a secret room in an arcade watching lewd videos together. Eventually, June gets seeked out and invited to be a pilot. The way this world works is that everybody is in this false state of consciousness where they think that it's all happy and ideal, but really it's all fake. The people that are pulling the strings have the majority of people tricked, thinking that they're living in a perfect peaceful society. However, they're fighting the aliens, as you would come to know from watching the series. And as the fighting continues, they kind of observe the people that are under this state of trickery or delusion, and they look for the ones that look like they're different, the ones that look like they can make great pilots, and they seek them out one by one. They let them in on what's going on, and they become a part of the battle, of the front lines in the war. So, like I said, eventually June gets seeked out to be invited to be a pilot. She gets let in on what is happening and how the city is fake, and gets to see Yamato in action against the aliens. I enjoyed seeing how her watching this battle unfold woke up something in her, as if she was born to fight like this. She claims she felt alive watching Yamato destroy the aliens, and feels a lot of inspiration towards joining the front lines. Kota, the boy who constantly gets bullied, so Kota is the kid with the afro who gets bullied. It's found out that he is an android that attracts negative attention on purpose and gets bullied on purpose, so none of the humans will have to face that. He gets befriended by Momoka and gets involved in some conflict in today's episode 7, or yesterday's episode rather, and to lead them getting back. Oh, so I got kind of confused. Apparently I can't multitask. But anyhow, so Kawata, the boy with the afro who gets bullied, it gets bullied on purpose as an android because it prevents the humans from getting bullied. It's like a precaution that the military is taking so that their actual humans don't get bullied. However, he becomes one of the new pilots in the latest episode, but there are no subtitles to episode 7, which came out yesterday. So I'll come back to episode 7 when the fan subtitles are out. Reiji, who is the catboy with psychic powers, is still fighting in the front lines, but his father is disappointed because Yamato, a regular human, is outperforming and fighting much better than him. Reiji is powerful, but he is still reluctant to use his powers all the way. I like the music in this. I'm not very fond of the rap songs though. The opening is alright, and I like the calling out of Megaton Musashi's name before it starts. The ending is decent. The artwork is fine, and the character designs are very pretty to look at. The CGI here looks very bulky and heavy. The fights are very destructive looking and chaotic, but it looks good. I look forward to this one and hope that it doesn't disappoint me, as I see it having a lot of potential if it keeps up how it is. I like Yamato. I like the hot-headed main character more, because as you've heard me say in this video and in other videos, we have a lot of goody two-shoe, morally obsessed main characters that are bland and boring and straight up cowards, like Mirai and Platinum Men, like the main character of Shigizakura, the main character of Deep Insanity. So it just, Yamato is still, he's still not very well developed, but he feels like a breath of fresh air, at least in this season, for a good main character. I find it fascinating how his voice actor sounds almost exactly like Joe from Ashura no Joe. If they ever do anything with Ashura no Joe, they should definitely pick that Yamato's voice actor for it. So this concludes the fall season. The best ones at the moment for me are Heike Monogatari, Megaton Musashi, and also my rankings if I have to pick the 3 that I like the most. But there are some other pretty decent ones too. But I do want to say one thing, and that's that 86, Mushoku Tensei, and Tactile Destiny, yes, they are trash, and I've already explained why in detail. So I'll see all of you again, either two episodes before all the series start to end, and I'll probably do one more podcast of this once all the series end, and then I'll break it down. Thank you for listening.